So yes, we are back in the games room and it's time for a really overdue pickups video. So I finally got my arse into gear to do the video. I had the game since probably about Feb. But it's been a while, so there are some additions to the game room, including a poster I was supposed to remove. It's a bit of a spoiler for the arcade pickups, which I'll still be doing. Other additions as well. I have been busy on AliExpress, so I've got some cheap lights in there, cheap and nasty, but they do the business. I am pretty happy with them. A little bit too bright in this video, but when you're here in person in the games room, it really lights it up and it makes it feel like a proper arcade. It really does. I'm well happy with them. But I'm not particularly happy with the little Neo Geo rug there. Yes, the black does look like it's some sort of cheap hair dye. Not impressed. But you're here for pickups, so let's talk about pickups. So let's kick off with a little bit of Saturn and Last Gladiators 9.7. Now, if you've ever played a KZ digital pinball game, then you'll be well familiar with the dodgy, dark, sullen intros. And this one has exactly the same intro as the original Last Gladiators, which actually came out in North America and PAL territories. But this is the new and improved version, the 9.7, which only came out in Japan, and it came out 2 years after the original, which came out in '97, hence the version name. And it's pretty much the same game and same tables, unfortunately, but it did improve on the mechanics and some of the gameplay, which is a big plus. I do like my pins, and this is a particularly good one as well. I had a lot of fun playing this one. But keep in mind, it is a sort of simulation pinball game, so if you prefer something like fancy pinball, this may not be your cup of tea, because the tables are a little bit lacking in imagination and not that varied. There's only about 4 tables in total, but it really shines in its playability and its mechanics. A lot of fun to play, very fast, and the soundtrack is absolutely amazing, and special effects as well. Really draws you, immerses you into the gameplay. So I recommend it if you like your simulation pinballs. And an added bonus, there is a playable version of Necronomicon, which ties nicely into the next game. I wasn't aware of these digital pinball games until Champion 2D Rob. He picked this one up in one of his pickup videos. So he sort of sent me down the rabbit hole on these KZ digital pinball games. So he's to blame for these 2 games, really. So after playing the demo on Last Gladiators, then I went ahead and picked this one up too. Why not? This actually came out 1 year before Last Gladiators 9.7. So I get the feeling that after they finished this one, they went back to the previous version and improved the game based on what they learned from this, because this one plays pretty much the same. It's a fantastic pinball game, and to be honest with you, I probably prefer it because of the tables are a little bit more interesting, and also the theme as well. It's got a lot more interesting theme than Last Gladiators. This time around, we're actually giving you 5 tables to choose from, and there's a lot more variation in the gameplay fields compared to Last Gladiator, where the tables always just felt a little bit too same-ish, to be honest with you. But this one definitely improves on that, and also the sound as well. Sound effects and the soundtrack, absolutely outstanding. Really complements the theme and immerses you in the gameplay. So if you're into your virtual pinball, give it a go. Next up, Steam Gear Mash. I took a little bit of a punt on this one, and so how would you sort of describe it? Well, it's kind of a isometric sort of run and gun adventure platformer game, a little bit of everything in there. I always tend to get these sort of 3D isometric games and then complain about them later. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of this one. It plays reasonably well, but like a lot of these games, it's not aged that well. Graphically, it looks absolutely great. It's colourful and cute. And I can imagine back in the day, if you saw screenshots of this in magazines, you would definitely be looking out to get this one. But in this day and age, I just don't have the patience to play this generation of isometric platformers. If it just stuck with the run and gun, I would have been fine, but no, I just get too frustrated with the platform part of the game. So unless you really love this genre, I can't really recommend it. Next up is Jijoku Ashibari Parodius. Apologies for the name butcher there. Of course, this is the Parodius game with the annoying chatty voice, and it's also a Parodius game that didn't come out in the West, which surely is a crime against humanity. What can I say about this one? Well, you can't go wrong with Parodius, can you? It may not be the best game in the series, well, it's certainly not my favourite, but there's no such thing as a bad Parodius game. They're all pretty fantastic in their own right. I mean, it's just pure piss take, fun, and amazing shooting gameplay. What more do you want in life? I do actually have the Super Famicom version, but I couldn't resist to get the Saturn version as well to complete the Parodius set. I think it also came out on the PS1. I'm not sure which is the better version, and they're all good. Next up, it's Crows. So I've been after this brawler for some time now, and it actually came up on Yahoo Auctions, so I'm stuck in a cheeky bid, and I got it for a pretty good price actually. I've got a feeling no one's actually bidding on it because of the case. So if you notice in the picture before, the spine is like transparent, so it kind of looks like it's not original, but I did a check and I believe that's the way it's supposed to be. The disc and everything else, the manual's all perfect and all good. So I'm well happy with it, but do let me know if that's the proper case. I've got real mixed feelings about this one. I do love the graphics and the character design. I know it might not be for everyone, and it really plays like an old Double Dragon or Technos, for good reason, because although it was published by Athena, it's pretty much the same guys from Technos that developed it, but when it comes to level design, it's really let down. I just don't know what they were thinking, breaking up the levels into short, almost little sets of different varying lengths as well. It just breaks up the game too much. It doesn't flow as well as it should do, which is really disappointing. The enemies can be a little bit repetitive too. They do throw in the same characters on certain levels, but there's some cool features as well, like certain characters in the background won't attack you unless you punch them first, in which case they get in the mix and start attacking you. If you love Technos games, you'll love it. Last Saturn game, and it's Bubble Symphony. This is another game I snagged on Yahoo Auctions. In fact, the same dude, same seller as Crows. I was pretty happy to get this one because I wasn't pushing the boat out on this one. I kept the bid pretty low because I do own the Taito F3 PCBs of this and memories as well, and I absolutely adore this game, and I just don't get why this does not get enough love. Everybody loves the original Bubble Bobble, and everybody talks about Rainbow Islands and Parasol Stars. Fantastic games, but this one is also a gem. I do love Memories as well, but this is probably the better game. Okay, it only came out in Japan and in the arcades too, but this one needs a hell of a lot more love than it gets. Owning the original PCB and getting the Saturn version is serious overkill, but it shows you how much I love this game. Bubble Bobble is one of my favourite games of all time, going back to the Amiga version. Hours in that game. So if you take the classic Bubble Bobble and then you just throw in so much of the Taito love, all the different characters from all the different games, what more can you ask? It's even got reference to another amazing game which I absolutely adore, and spoiler alert for the arcade pickups. So if you like Bubble Bobble, you have to play this game. Don't care how you do it, just do it. Moving on to the PC Engine, F1 Dream. Now this is another arcade game I absolutely adore. It's by Capcom, but what the hell did they do to it? You have no idea how long I've been looking forward to actually checking this out on the PC Engine. I probably realised this was on the system probably about a year ago, and I've always been looking out for it, and didn't really appear that often, so finally it appeared at a decent price. And it's this, just look at it. Just look at that. Now, if you've ever played the arcade version of this, then you'll know it's an extremely simple, primitive racing game, overhead just like this, but it's fun because you actually race against other cars. Where are the other cars? There's none. There's just no fun, there's no enjoyment. They took the enjoyment out of this game completely. Avoid. Try the arcade version. Next up is Fire Pro Women. I actually picked this one primarily because it's another one of these arcade CD games, so it uses the additional memory, and I think they were just having a laugh with this one. Really, it doesn't need the additional memory. It could have been just on a simple Hue card. There's nothing to this game at all. In fact, it's broken. Quite amusing how they went to all that trouble to do the female figure in the character selection and then decide to pixelate it. But I know there's a lot of people that love this series, they love their wrestling games, and I'm sure it plays just like the other series. So if you like that kind of thing, maybe it's for you, but it's not my kind of game, to be honest with you, and especially when it broke on me, when the enemy just started stomping on me and it was stuck in a loop. I really didn't have the stomach to play through the game again to see if it was my game that was really broken or not. I'm sure it's fine. Next up is Techno World Cup Super Soccer. This is another arcade footy series that I absolutely love. The Neo Geo version is pretty good, but unfortunately, again, there's disappointment on this one. They didn't pull it off on the PC Engine, unfortunately. Some people have got quite good reviews online on this one, but for me, it doesn't capture the gameplay at all as the arcade does. The actual video footage probably looks pretty similar to what you would expect, and probably looks fairly decent, but unlike the arcade version, you always end up kicking the ball out. It's very difficult to actually pass compared to the sort of free-flowing gameplay of the arcade. And it was extremely hard to score goals as well. I didn't enjoy this one at all. There's much better footy games out there. But there are better PC Engine games coming, don't worry. And talking about decent PC Engine games, you got this little gem. So apologies up front, I am going to try and pronounce the name, so apologies up front for anyone that knows Japanese. Is it Haiho Dedetsu Chris no Buken? Something like that, I guess. I struggle enough with my English pronunciation, I shouldn't be trying Japanese as well. But anyway, this is definitely worth your time. It's a game that's kind of been kept a little bit under the radar until recently. I've noticed this one popping up on more and more videos at the moment, a lot more people talking about it. So if you like what you see, you probably want to grab this one while it's relatively cheap. But it's a sort of adventure platform game, as you can see, and it plays pretty well. It's very smooth, but I have to tell you, it is absolutely solid. The actual platforming is not that difficult, but your biggest enemy is time. Yes, if you run out of time, you die. So I really struggle in this one. At the beginning, you sort of take your time, you're trying to kill the enemies, and by the end, you're just running through the enemies trying to get to the end of the level. You've got some nice power-ups along the way as well, which are absolutely essential if you want to get through the level. It's a really charming game. Visually it's stunning, and also the music as well. I really got into the keyboard music, but like I mentioned, you are going to run out of time and die. Next up, we've got the TV show. This is not a particularly common PC engine, so you don't always see this one around. So I was quite happy to actually pick this one up. And what kind of game is it? Well, it's kind of like a Bomberman clone. Character selection is important in this game, depending on how you play. And they included a whole host of different wacky Japanese characters to choose from. The game designer did include some stereotypes in there as well, which, let's just say, aged very poorly, and no way this game could have come out in the West. Like Bomberman games, that is a sort of one-player adventure game, but you ain't going to waste your time there. You're just going to go straight into the battle arena. Well, I mentioned it was a Bomberman clone. It actually plays very differently. The idea is to actually throw your bombs and break tiles. If you hit your opponent with a bomb, they won't actually die, but they will fly across the screen. So the whole idea is to knock them off the tiles, and this is where the character selection comes into play. If you want a bigger character, you've got more chance of pushing off your opponent, or if you go for a little character, you can run around the screen and get away from the danger. As you play, the host will throw different bombs around the arena for you to pick up and use. But it gets a little bit tricky to work out what they do because they look very similar. But you'll get used to it and you'll have fun. Next up, it's Mystic Formula. This is another game that's not particularly common, so I was well chuffed to get this one. It's kind of like a sort of overhead sort of shooter, sort of run and gun kind of game. Very similar to something like Red Alert or even something like Game Ground, maybe a sort of less tactical version of Game Ground. It's CD based, so they included some quite cool cutscenes in there, and there's a nice selection of different characters. There's 4 distinct ones with very unique loadouts, but I'll get into character selection because that's more important when you're playing one player. There's nice power-ups as well, which are really important if you want to progress. And you even can pick up a sort of second character along the way to help you. The cool thing about the game is it's got a co-op 2-player mode in it as well. But I got a feeling they kind of put more effort into that mode than they did on the single player, because you've got these high-powered characters shooting everything, shooting these big robotic enemies, but they really struggle with bats. Yes, you're going to find bats freaking annoying. They're going to follow you around the screen and they're going to kill you. You're going to try and outrun them, and if you've got a character that only fires straight, you're going to struggle. But I found that the best character to choose is this sort of robot dude that has this sort of fire shot that goes round behind him as well, just to sort out those pesky little nasty bats. Overall, it's a fairly decent game, but would I go back and play this one? Probably not. So I can't really recommend you to go out and find a physical copy of this one, especially considering the cost, but I would say go and get an emulation, find the ROM, give it a go. Last but certainly not least, it's Pop and Magic. This is a game that I've always seen around, but I never knew what type of game it actually was. I always saw that cover, that cutesy nice cover, but I never saw any reviews on it, so I didn't actually realise it was the type of game that it is. And of course it is a sort of arcade platformer, very similar to something like Snow Bros, which yeah, was a real pleasant surprise. Graphically it's really bright and colourful, really reminds me of Don Doki Don, especially with all the trees and greenery in there as well, which for me is a good thing. I do love that game. I think it's kind of underrated. But the game mechanics has slight differences to it. It's all about the orbs. So once you actually shoot the enemies, they obviously get captured into these balls, these orbs, and you need to smash together the orbs of different colours to actually get rid of the enemies off the screen. If you make the mistake of actually smashing 2 orbs together of the same colour, then you're in for a bit of a surprise as they get released and extremely pissed off. Gameplay wise, it's not particularly challenging, so it is directed more for kids. So it is a nice one to pop in if you've got younger ones, just to get into the genre. Definitely very charming game and well worth your time, and it's still relatively cheap. So it's a nice one to pick up and add to your collection. So there you have it, that's all the games I'm going to cover in this video. This is some stuff I picked up all the way back in Feb. So as you can imagine, I do have a huge backlog of games since then. So I'll try and make some videos in the near future. So of course there's some more PC Engine, some really good titles. Some bad ones too as well, of course, just to mix it up. Even got some Super Famicom, of course some more Saturn, some Mega Drive, some Sega My Cards as well, a couple of those, and even some SG-1000s game, which is nice for a change. So thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. Laters.